A billionaire shattered by infertility, a pregnant teacher who risks her life to save him. From a fiery car crash to a custody war and a love that defies society's judgment, Julian and Selena's story is one of courage, sacrifice, and finding family where you least expect it. But just when happiness seems within reach, a devastating secret threatens to destroy everything they've built. Who is Selena really, and can their love survive one final betrayal? Where are you watching from? Drop your city below and subscribe to our channel to follow more powerful stories that touch the heart and stir the soul. Rain slashed across the Boston skyline like 1,000 tiny needles, turning the windshield into a blur of red tail lights and white street lamps. Julian Hayes gripped the steering wheel of his black Aston Martin, his knuckles pale against the leather. The hum of the engine was the only sound competing with the storm outside, but inside Julian's head there was only silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Just hours ago, he'd stood in the private office of one of the top fertility specialists in New England, staring numbly as the words fell like bullets. "Mr. Hayes, the tests are conclusive. You're infertile. I'm sorry." He didn't remember much after that. A polite nod. A signed form, maybe. But now he was hurtling down I-93 in a haze of disbelief. Billionaire. Innovator. Empire builder. A man who prided himself on control of markets, mergers, outcomes. But this? His own body had betrayed him. Legacy was more than just a buzzword in boardrooms. It was the weight of his father's expectations, the pressure to pass down the Hayes name. His father, a hard-nosed industrialist who once told him, "A man is measured by what he leaves behind," would have called him broken. The rain intensified. Julian's vision blurred, but he didn't blink. He pressed the accelerator harder, his thoughts spiraling faster than the tires spinning on the slick road. What was the point of all this? The high-rises, the private jets, the accolades? He couldn't shake the emptiness that clawed at him. That's when the curve came out of nowhere. The guardrail screeched against the side of the car like nails on glass. Metal crumpled. Airbags deployed. Then everything went black. Several blocks away, Selena Brooks was finishing her evening shift at the Emerson Literacy Center, tucked inside a weathered brick building in Roxbury. She was soaked to the bone, her curls pinned under a knit cap, her oversized coat draped protectively over her midsection. The twins inside her kicked gently, and she rubbed her belly with a tired smile. Just a few more months, she whispered it like a prayer. Teaching at Booker High during the day and running evening programs for underserved teens wasn't easy, especially being 39, pregnant, and alone. But Selena had grown up on these same streets, had lost her mother to breast cancer at 16, and watched her neighborhood sink deeper into crime and poverty. She knew what these kids were up against. She fought every day to give them another path. As she merged onto the bridge, her headlights caught a sudden flicker of orange, flames curling up from the wreckage of a crashed sports car. Her heart dropped. She pulled over without thinking, hazard lights blinking furiously as she leapt out into the storm. Her sneakers skidded on the wet pavement, but she kept moving, weaving through the smoking wreck until she reached the driver's side. The door was jammed. Flames licked the undercarriage. Selena coughed against the stench of gasoline as she grabbed the handle with both hands and yanked. Nothing. She slammed her shoulder into it, once, twice. On the third try, it cracked open just enough. She reached in and found a man slumped over the wheel, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead. "Hey, can you hear me?" she shouted over the rain and the rising roar of fire. No response. With a grunt, she reached across his chest, unlatched the seatbelt, and began to drag him out. He was heavier than he looked, tall with a lean build and tailored clothes that clung to his soaked skin. She braced her feet and hauled him free just seconds before the vehicle exploded behind them in a burst of flame and smoke. Breathing hard, Selena laid him on the pavement, checking his pulse. It was weak, but there. As sirens wailed in the distance, she looked down at his face, cut, pale, dazed, and for a brief moment their eyes met, blue and brown, panic and calm. A flicker of something passed between them. Then, as the EMTs arrived and took over, she slipped quietly back into her car and drove away. She didn't know who he was, but something told her this night would change everything. 2 days passed before Julian Hayes could sit upright without a wave of nausea crashing over him. The sterile white walls of the private recovery suite at St. Germain's Hospital did little to settle his restlessness. He should have died, the doctor said. One more second and the fire would have reached the fuel tank. But what haunted Julian wasn't the crash. It was the face of the woman who had pulled him from it. He saw her in flashes, drenched curls stuck to her forehead, brown eyes fierce with focus, hands trembling as they pulled him to safety. She'd vanished before anyone could get her name, but he couldn't shake her. She'd saved his life. That meant something. "Clara," he rasped when his assistant arrived with her ever-present tablet and a fresh espresso in hand. "I want to find her." Clara Bennett, fiercely efficient and loyal to a fault, raised a skeptical brow. "The woman who dragged you from the wreck?" "Julian, the police said she left before anyone got her information. She didn't even stick around to give a statement." "Then find the traffic cams, fire department logs, local businesses, whatever it takes." His voice, though hoarse, held the quiet steel she recognized from boardroom takeovers. She didn't argue. Within 36 hours, Clara returned with a slim folder and a knowing look. "Her name is Selena Brooks, 39, teaches literature at Booker High in Roxbury, runs an after-school literacy program, single, no criminal record, pregnant, twins. She lives alone in a walk-up apartment near Dudley Square. That's her." Clara handed him a photo, printed from a community center's social media page. Selena stood surrounded by kids, her smile warm but tired. She wore a long cardigan that barely concealed the curve of her belly, and her eyes, those unmistakable eyes, held the same fire Julian remembered. He stared at the photo for a long time, then finally spoke. "Set up a meeting," Clara sighed. "Julian, I know that look. Just be careful. She's not one of your gala girls. Her world is nothing like yours." "I know," he said quietly. "That's why I need to do this right." The next evening, Selena arrived at Café Brighton, a quiet spot chosen by Clara for its privacy. She almost turned around twice on the way. The message had been simple. "The man you saved would like to thank you. No pressure, just coffee." Still, as she stepped inside the soft glow of the café, her heart thudded against her ribs. When she saw him sitting near the window, out of the sharp suit and instead in a soft navy sweater and jeans, something shifted in her chest. "Ms. Brooks," he said, standing quickly, his voice gentler than she expected. "I'm Julian Hayes." She nodded slowly. "You're the man from the car. Guilty." He gave a lopsided smile and gestured to the seat across from him. "I owe you everything." Selena sat cautiously. "You don't owe me anything. I just did what anyone would do." Julian shook his head. "You risked your life for a stranger. That's not nothing." There was a pause, weighted but not uncomfortable. Selena glanced down at her belly and then back at him. "I've seen your face before. You're the guy on Forbes, right?" "Hayes Capital?" Julian winced. "Among other things." "And what's a man like you doing in Roxbury?" she asked, her tone part curious, part protective. He leaned forward slightly. "Looking for the only person who's seen me when I wasn't bulletproof." Selena blinked. That was not the answer she expected. Their conversation meandered, awkward at first, then slowly finding rhythm. She told him about her students, about the twin girls she was carrying. Julian opened up about the infertility diagnosis that had shattered him. When she offered a quiet, "I'm sorry," he shrugged, but his jaw clenched. "Maybe you saved me from more than a burning car," he said. By the time they stepped out into the cool evening, Selena's defenses had softened. But as they parted ways, neither saw the figure leaning against a lamppost across the street, watching. Tobias Kane, the biological father of the twins, exhaled a thin line of smoke and narrowed his eyes. Well, well," he muttered. "Looks like payday's coming sooner than I thought." The morning air was thick with humidity as Selena Brooks stepped out of her apartment building, one hand pressed protectively over her belly. She was 32 weeks along, and her body had started sending strange signals, tightening sensations, pressure low in her back. She told herself it was just Braxton Hicks. She'd pushed through tougher days. But as she stepped off the curb, a sharp, sudden pain gripped her like a vice. She staggered, gasping, clutching a parking meter to stay upright. Panic flared in her chest. "Not now, please," she whispered, fumbling for her phone with trembling fingers. The only name she could think to call was Ms. Rose Carter. "Sweetheart, I'm on my way," Rose said immediately, voice calm but firm. "Stay where you are." An hour later, Selina lay in a hospital bed, pale and sweating, monitors strapped across her belly. Beeping machines echoed through the labor and delivery room at St. Germain's. Her contractions were coming faster than anyone wanted to admit. Across the city, Julian Hayes sat in a glass-walled boardroom 20 floors above downtown Boston. A team of executives argued about a European acquisition, but he heard none of it. His phone vibrated once, an unknown number. He ignored it. Then again. Then a third time. On instinct, he excused himself and stepped into the hallway, answering with curt urgency. "Mr. Hayes," a nurse's voice came through, low and fast. "This is Chicago Presbyterian. Miss Selina Brooks has been admitted in early labor. She asked us to call you." His breath caught. "She what? Already?" "She's stable for now, but the twins are coming early." Julian didn't wait to ask permission. He was out the door in minutes, coat forgotten, driver be damned. He tore through the streets in his own car, ignoring honking horns and red lights, heart pounding. Every minute felt like a mile. He remembered Selina's voice from that night at the cafe. "I'm scared I won't be enough for them." He had felt helpless then. He would not feel that way again. When he arrived at the hospital, Selina's room was a flurry of movement. Nurses in scrubs, machines blinking, Rose Carter standing at the side of the bed, holding Selina's hand tightly. "I'm scared," Selina whispered, barely coherent as another contraction ripped through her. "You're not alone," Julian said, appearing beside her, his hand reaching for hers. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Selina turned her head, eyes brimming with pain and surprise. "You came." "Of course I came," he said, voice cracking. "You don't have to face this by yourself." A doctor stepped in, face serious. "Ms. Brooks, the babies are in distress. We need to perform an emergency C-section. We're prepping now." Selina nodded, tears streaming. "Take care of them," she said to Julian, her voice almost a breath. "Promise me." "I promise," he whispered, squeezing her hand until the surgical team wheeled her away. Hours passed like lifetimes. Julian paced the waiting room, fists clenched, heart in his throat. Rose sat silently, her hands folded, humming an old lullaby under her breath. Finally, a doctor emerged. "Mr. Hayes? Ms. Brooks is stable. The girls are small, just under 3 pounds each, but breathing. They're in the NICU." Relief crashed over him like a wave. "Can I see them?" He was led to a quiet hallway filled with soft beeps and tiny heartbeats. Behind the glass of the neonatal unit, 2 incubators sat side by side. Tiny creatures, fragile but alive, lay swaddled in tubes and blankets. One of them opened her eyes, dark and alert. Julian felt his knees weaken. "Hello," he whispered to the glass. "I'm here. I'm not your dad, not by blood, but I'll be whatever you need." Behind him, unnoticed, Tobias Kane stood just outside the NICU hallway, holding up his phone. He snapped a picture of Julian gazing at the babies and smiled coldly. "Billionaire steps in for another man's kids," he muttered, already typing a message to a contact in the tabloids. "Let's make this interesting." Sunlight filtered through the blinds in Selina's recovery room, casting warm strips of gold across the sheets. Her body ached, but her heart beat with cautious hope. Julian sat beside her, a fresh cup of hospital coffee in hand, wearing the same clothes from the night before. His eyes were tired but focused, only on her. For the last 2 days, he'd been back and forth between her side and the NICU, memorizing every beep of the monitors, reading softly to Luna and Ivy, adjusting the blankets with careful hands. He wasn't their father, not officially, but he was already moving like he belonged. "I still can't believe you stayed," Selina murmured, her voice raw. Julian looked at her, a slight smile tugging at his mouth. "I'm not leaving. You saved my life. Let me stay in yours." Selina blinked at the weight of those words, unsure how to carry them. Before she could respond, there was a knock at the door. A nurse stepped in with a clipboard and an envelope. "You have a visitor," she said carefully. "Well, more of a messenger." Selina frowned and took the envelope. It was crisp and white, her name written in stiff cursive. She opened it slowly. Inside was a legal notice. "Petition for custody, Tobias Kane v. Selina Brooks." Her chest tightened. Julian leaned over and read it, his jaw locking. "He's suing for custody?" he said, stunned. "He abandoned you the moment you told him you were pregnant." "That was before the billionaire got involved," Selina whispered bitterly. Tobias had never cared about the twins. She knew this wasn't about love. It was leverage. A move to humiliate her or force a payout. The worst part wasn't the legal threat. It was the public one. That evening, the first article hit the gossip blogs. A photo of Julian standing by the NICU window, hand against the glass, staring down at Luna with tenderness. The headline screamed, "Billionaire Hayes claims another man's children." The byline, an anonymous tip citing sources close to the mother. And just like that, Selena's name was no longer her own. It was a headline. At Booker High, murmurs spread like wildfire. A few parents emailed the school board. Some questioned whether she should return after maternity leave. Others assumed she was some social climber who'd trapped a rich man. The cruel whispers stung, more than she wanted to admit. Julian watched the fallout unfold with rising fury. That night, in his penthouse office, he summoned Olivia, his legal liaison. "Hire the best family attorney in Boston," he said sharply. "I want full background checks on Tobias Kane. Everything." Olivia hesitated. "Julian, this will get ugly. You could be dragged into a custody battle over children who aren't legally yours." Julian's voice was firm. "They're mine in every way that counts, and I won't let her face this alone." Across town, Selena sat on her bed in the dim light, holding a printed copy of the article. Her hands trembled as she looked at the photo, her daughters reduced to pawns. The knock on her door made her flinch. She opened it slowly, only to find a woman dressed in understated elegance, beige coat, neat pearls, sharp eyes. Vivian Hayes, Julian's sister. "I'd like a word," she said coolly, stepping in without invitation. She looked around the small apartment, her nose twitching slightly. "What do you want?" Selena asked, keeping her tone level. Vivian pulled an envelope from her purse and placed it on the kitchen table. $1 million, enough to relocate, raise your children, pursue whatever dream you claim to have. Just stay away from my brother. Selena stared at the check, heat rising behind her eyes. "You think I'd sell myself? My children?" Vivian raised a manicured brow. "I think everyone has a price." Selena slid the check back across the table without touching it. "Then you clearly don't know a damn thing about me." As Vivian walked out, Selena slammed the door behind her, fists clenched. She looked down at her phone, already dialing Julian. "We need to talk," she said, her voice shaking. "Now." The courtyard of the Southside Community Center buzzed with soft laughter, the scent of lemonade and baked goods floating in the warm breeze. Colorful streamers rustled above rows of folding chairs, and a hand-painted banner read, "Happy First Birthday, Luna and Ivy." Children chased balloons while adults mingled in small groups. It wasn't extravagant, not like the lavish events Julian Hayes was used to, but it was alive, with love, purpose, and community. The kind of place Selena had always dreamed of giving her daughters. Selena stood near the makeshift stage in a flowing pale yellow dress, Ivy perched on her hip, tugging playfully at her mother's earrings. Luna, ever curious, was in Julian's arms, clapping her tiny hands at everything that sparkled. Julian, dressed down in rolled-up sleeves and sneakers, looked completely out of place, and yet more at home than ever. "I think she just called the balloon Baba," he said with mock seriousness. Selena laughed, shaking her head. "She's either a genius or just very fond of shiny things." Julian smiled, but there was a nervous twitch behind his eyes. He reached into his pocket, fingers brushing the small velvet box that had felt heavier with each passing minute. He looked at her, really looked, and knew this was the moment. The perfect mess. Kids laughing, neighbors watching, life happening. He handed Luna to Mrs. Rose Carter and turned to face Selena. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice softer now, cutting through the hum of celebration. The crowd fell quiet, as if sensing something was about to shift. Selena tilted her head, curious. "Julian?" He stepped forward, then slowly knelt on one knee. Gasps rippled through the guests. Selena froze, her breath catching in her throat. "Selena Brooks," he began, eyes fixed on hers. "You saved my life. Literally, yes, but also you pulled me out of something much darker. You gave me a reason to believe in more than just numbers and buildings. You gave me family. You, Luna, and Ivy, you're my home. Will you marry me?" Time stood still. Ivy blinked, Luna clapped. Selena's hand went to her mouth as her eyes welled with tears. The crowd seemed to hold its breath. She nodded slowly, then whispered through the tears. "Yes, Julian, yes." Cheers exploded around them. Mrs. Rose wiped a tear from her cheek. Jamal, one of Selena's former students now working part-time at the center, pumped a fist in the air. Vivian Hayes, standing in the back beside Jamal, smiled for the first time without irony. Her apology to Selena months ago had been sincere, and since then, she'd become a regular presence in the twins' lives. Proof that people could change, even the ones hardened by privilege. But not every pair of eyes watched with joy. Across the street, behind the tinted windows of a black sedan, Tobias Kane sat gripping his phone. His smirk twisted bitterly as he watched the moment unfold. The proposal, the applause, the way Selena leaned into Julian like he belonged there. Like he was the father. He opened his messages and began typing a final move, a last desperate strike. Exclusive, Selena Brooks lied about her college past. Ask me how. He attached an old, doctored document, a fabricated disciplinary notice. He knew it was a gamble, but it was all he had left. With the adoption case pending and his fraud charges growing, he needed something, anything, to shatter the perfect life they were building. The next morning, Selena woke to find her name trending again, not for the birthday, not for the proposal, but for a fabricated scandal about her college years. Scholarship scam? One headline read, teacher or fraud. She sat on the edge of the bed, stunned. Julian came in holding Ivy and the tablet. We're going to fight this, he said immediately. I've already called Olivia and Rachel. Selena shook her head, blinking away tears. I don't want this hurting the program, the girls. It won't, Julian said, kneeling in front of her again. Not with a ring this time, but with resolve. We've been through worse, and we won. We'll win again, together. Selena looked at him, then at the twin girls sleeping peacefully in the bassinet. Okay, she whispered, voice steadying. Let's finish what we started. Life has a way of bringing the most unexpected people together at the most unexpected moments. Julian and Selena came from opposite worlds, one of wealth, the other of struggle. But it wasn't money, status, or background that defined their bond. It was courage. Selena's courage to risk her life for a stranger. Julian's courage to open his heart after pain. And together, they built a family, not from blood, but from choice, love, and shared purpose. The most valuable lesson here is this. Family isn't always something you're born into. It's something you create. It's the people who show up when things fall apart, the ones who fight for you when the world turns against you, and the ones who stay when it's easier to walk away. Love, when grounded in respect and resilience, has the power to heal old wounds and build something unbreakable. Selena never let her circumstances define her. And Julian learned that legacy isn't about money or name. It's about the lives you touch and the hearts you protect. Together, they proved that real strength lies in vulnerability, and real love is not about perfection, but about standing by each other through every storm. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring and heartfelt stories like this one. Thank you for being here.